Hello, everyone, and good morning. Welcome to our live feed update for August 20th. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and with me today is Brent. How you doing, Brent?
I'm doing great. I will say that now that I'm listening to you a little bit more, I think maybe your wrong microphone's on. It sounds like you're in a room, like in a tunnel somewhere. So maybe try that again.
Yes, that's the Hangout microphone.
Yes,
Yep.
yes, yes. Well, I was so taken with your sultry tones in the morning, Taran, that I just couldn't even notice before when I was talking to you. But
Well, luckily the audience should be hearing the correct microphone, and
now
now
we
I
hear
have
it.
switched it for you. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Yes. Now that sounds. Oh, so before they were totally fine no matter what. I was the one getting the shit into the stick. Okay.
Yes, exactly. I really, you know what? It's my perspective was Brent doesn't deserve the good microphone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now I'm with you.
All right. Well, we are here to update you on everything that happened yesterday on the Big Brother 21 live feeds. It was day 62 in the house. Day 62. And we had a veto ceremony. Jackson did not use the veto. And he's later going to say he felt kind of bad about it because he could see the hope in their eyes, the optimism when he went into the veto ceremony, because he never said no to the pitch. He never told them, no, I'm not going to do that. And so he saw the hope and the optimism in their eyes, but and then he saw how disappointed they were when he did not go through with it.
Yeah, that should be good TV, though, I have to say. So if they really don't know what's going to happen in the veto ceremony, although, come on, like, let's be real. Like, in any universe, like, Christy knew that he was not going to use the veto. Sis is the only person who really thought, oh, maybe he might use the veto, because if he's going to use the veto, he's going to make a deal with you. He's not going to just willy-nilly make a decision to use the veto and then, like, leave it up to chance. Like, what the hell happens after? So, come on. Like, that's crazy talk.
Yeah, that's not how it works. If you don't know what they're going to do when they go to do it, then they're doing the thing you don't want them to do 90% of the time.
Yep, exactly. I will say that when the initial nominations came through and Christy and Sis were nominated and Tommy, like, remember, Jackson didn't tell Tommy what he was going to do. He was like, I'm not telling you what I'm going to do, but I am telling you, I am not nominating you. I give you my word on that. So at least Tommy knew that, okay, it's probably not good news, but I know I'm safe here, so that's all that matters. So, like, when you at least have some anchor to grab onto, there's something to look forward to. But in this case, there was literally nothing for them to grab onto.
All right. So we then have, after the veto ceremony, Tommy is going to go to Jackson. I get it. You know, I completely understand why you didn't want to take the deal. Right after the pitch, right after we made the pitch, I was thinking about it, and I was like, you know what? It doesn't make sense for Jackson to take this deal. I completely understand why he might, decide to go against it. And you know what? You don't owe us anything. We put you in this position, and it's totally fair what you're doing.
Yeah, very self-reflective Tommy has been over the past 24 to 48 hours. I really, don't come at me, but I really like this Tommy. I like him being a little bit more humble and being like, I'm not as good as this game as I thought I was, which he says later on in the night, and recognizing that the game in front of him is what he needs to play, not the game behind him. So I like this, and I feel like that he's been very adult about it. I also feel like if he ended up in the jury, he'd be a very good juror in trying to evaluate people's gameplay. But then again, I've been surprised before. You never know with these people.
Yes. So that's gonna be Tommy's tactic. He's gonna take the same line of thought with Christy and Sis, telling them like, I get it. He's gonna do what he's gonna do. They're a little bit less understanding. They're downstairs. Now, Christy does say, you know what? Whatever about Jackson. He did what he had to do. Fine. This is all Nick's fault. Nick is the worst. Nick made a deal. He threw the HOH. He's been good with everyone. He's safe with everybody. He's making deals and he's throwing competitions and he's lying to people and he's playing all sides. And I want to call him out. I want to make him a target before I go home.
Or I might chicken out and totally not do that too. I mean, like that's
Yeah,
also a
that might happen.
possibility. Yeah, that might happen. So, Nick's doing all the things that you should have been doing last week, Christy. I mean, come on, we talked about this on the roundtable last night. You had all of the help in the world from Tommy, the greatest player in the house. I feel like right now, right next to Cliff, to say he held your hand and said, "Look, this is what you need to do. You need to go to them, and you need to make peace with them." And she's like, "Yeah, I'm good." She's like, literally, she didn't do that, but in my head, that's how she did it. She was like, "I'm good." Like she didn't care. She was like, "They're the targets. Like it's all good. No worries." And then, of course, like I said last night on the roundtable, the one person wins HOH that you don't want to win HOH, and now your game is in a complete toilet here. So there you are, Christy. And I don't know why she's getting so mad at Nick. Like Nick, for the most part, has been really too loyal to this group to a point where he should have been burned by it. Obviously, we are aware that if Sis had come down, there is a possibility that Nick would have gone up as the replacement nominee, or also Tommy, depending on how the veto worked out and who held the veto. But my goodness, I don't understand her angst here over Nick, other than the fact that he's playing a better game than her right now. But that's not saying a lot.
Yeah, and this is a classic case of thinking that calling somebody disloyal to your group is going to make them a target to other groups. It's exactly the mistake Kat made last week when she was trying to call out Cliff for not being loyal to Cliff's Angels, when really that just meant that, oh, if he's not loyal to Cliff's Angels, then Cliff's Angels don't matter, and he might be loyal to us. It's a similar effect. What you want to do to call somebody out and make them a target is say, this person, I know them outside the house. They're my best friend. They were always loyal to me. They will continue to always be loyal to me and all of my friends. That makes them a target, not like they were never loyal to me this whole time. It's like, oh, well, we can pick them up then.
Exactly. Good news for us.
So Sis mentions to Christy she really wants to go after Jackson and Holly. She's going to say this multiple times throughout the day. Cliff talks to Jackson and Holly. Cliff playing an interesting game here. Cliff is saying to them, hey, Jess came up to me and she was making it seem like the five are getting back together with Christy going home. That, you guys and Nick and Tommy and Sis, you guys are working together, and so it's going to be us on the outside. Again, being left out. And Jackson and Holly just once again going to be like, what is she doing? Why? And Cliff's like, I don't know either, guys. I don't know. I think this is who knows exactly what Cliff's motivations are here, but it does, I think, help him out in a large way, because when the week started, Holly and Jackson felt like they had Jess, and having Jess is great for them. It's better than having Cliff and Nicole and only Cliff and Nicole. Like having Jess as their number 3. She's the perfect person to bring to Final 3. But time and time again, they have learned that they can't trust Jess, and Cliff is adding to that pile as well. If they feel like Jess is against them, then they can't turn on Cliff and Nicole as soon as they should in the future. So it is a good thing here if he keeps the tension between these two groups, if possible. But of course, when you're playing this kind of game, you always need to be very careful about what might come back to Jess.
Yes, this again, I just don't understand Jess. I'm not sure that Jess understands Jess. I don't know what she's doing. It's not like there's a situation where some people like, I'm gonna float in the middle and I'm gonna tell this side what they want to hear, and I'm gonna tell this side what they want to hear, and I'm gonna intentionally float between them. But that's not what she's doing. In fact, she really has no allies to speak of whatsoever. And I'm trying to figure out, okay, so is that going to help her or hurt her in an obvious week where she might end up on the block either as a target or as a pawn? Like, who is going to want to really get rid of her? Yes, there are people who are really angry with her here, but on the other hand, her gameplay is so shabby that she really doesn't have any allies whatsoever, people that trust her, because she's not loyal to anyone and can't be trusted with any information. So who's really going to go to bat for her, but who's really going to want to come for her? Like, I feel like she's in a sort of a no man's land here. In fact, I wish she'd be playing more awful so that we could get rid of her.
Yeah, we mentioned this on the roundtable last night. She is going to, and there's not a whole lot of context around this discussion, so it's really just a comment that she's making, because she's going to tell Nicole that she regrets taking Jack out, that that was a mistake. And then the feeds cut to a different conversation, so we don't get more context about like why she's feeling this way. But she's feel like, I feel like maybe we should have done something different. That Jack vote. I just feel, I feel
like
like
what?
I feel like they're even closer now, and we're still being left out of things. So.
No, you're being left out of things, Jess, because you have a blabbermouth and don't know when to keep your mouth shut and throw your allies who are literally loyal to you to a fault under the bus. You are a crazy person.
I think that she thought that if she took Jack out, then she'd be best friends with Christy afterward. Like, Christy would no longer have Jack to fawn over, and it would break up the whole group, and then she could be best friends with Christy and Kat, and everybody would live happily ever after, and she would always be included in all things.
I mean, there's just no universe where that's going to happen. Also, she has to recognize that the person she placed on the block with Jack in Jackson wasn't really, at that point, part of the group. If you really want to break up a group and get them fighting with each other, you have to put 2 people from the group on the block. That way, at the end of the week, when they're both sitting on the block, the veto hasn't been used, and they're sitting there, then they literally have to fight for votes with each other, and it creates dissension. And that is how you cause strife between groups like this. But nominating effectively an insider versus an outsider in Jack and Jackson was never going to do what Jess hoped it did in the first place, even if she did eventually get her way.
Yeah. Not to mention, let's remember that it was left the door open for Christie's power to be used to put those 2 up.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, thank you for reminding me about that.
Yes. So Jess is all over the place here. So in this conversation with Cliff, Jackson, Holly, they mention again they want to work together moving forward. They're given their handshakes. They're like, we're gonna make this happen. Tommy,
do you trust this? I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but do you trust this? I do trust this. I do trust it from Jackson and Holly's end, and I believe I trust it from Cliff and Nicole's end. I do not think that either one of them would nominate Jackson and Holly going into next week.
I think that's probably true. But we still have to wait for the Cliff and Tommy full conversation, I think, to know exactly what Cliff might do. There was a comment made by Cliff later in the day to Nicole. He said, Jackson and Holly think that they have us, which is great.
Yes.
And that's kind of an interesting way to put that. I think that, thinking that they have you is not the same as having you. But I think that the fact that they think that they have them means that they might have them at least for the short term. So like I said, I don't think that Cliff would turn around next week necessarily and put up Jackson and Holly, because I think he feels pretty comfortable with them in a medium term situation. But I also don't think that Cliff would necessarily be loyal all the way to the end to these people. We'll just have to wait and see on this one, though, because I think that there's still a lot up in the air about Cliff has a lot of options. He really could go anywhere at this point.
He really does. And I don't when Cliff says they think they have us, you're not instantly going to spend that credibility. I know I was campaigning on the roundtable last night for him to spend it, but that's not the credibility I'm talking about. I'm talking about this sort of relationship that you have with them. If you know that they think that they have you, you're not then going to want to nominate them and just totally blow that relationship up when other people are actively thinking about nominating you or not at the top of your totem pole. So I really do feel like that no matter what he says with Tommy later on in the week, that Cliff and Nicole will be loyal to Jackson and Holly for one round here.
Yes, and I will also say that Nicole's response was like, "Yeah, I really trust Jackson and Holly.
Yes, exactly.
I believe in them." So Nicole, I think, a lot less likely to turn on them than Cliff at this point. So they're talking about working together moving forward. That will continue to solidify over the course of the day, and I imagine over the course of the week. Tommy is going to talk with Sis out in the backyard. He is talking about next week, and this is when we get the comment where we finally get confirmation that these competition wins and the fact that Jackson had been willing to put Tommy on the block, it is finally coming together, and we are seeing that Tommy is shifting his priorities, and he says that if he wins next week, he wants to target Jackson and Holly. Now, again, we talked about this on the roundtable. that doesn't mean that he wants to win next week and make this move necessarily. But I also feel like he can't. I feel like he's not planning on like just completely throwing the competition outright, which means that, you know, if he is saying this to Sis, I do believe that if he happens to win, it wouldn't surprise me if he made this move. Granted, there's still a lot that can change, and I think his conversations with Cliff will be very important. You know, if Cliff messes those up and somehow sketches Tommy out too much, then he might change his mind. But I do think that right now he would target Jackson and Holly if he won, but obviously his preference would be that Sis or Nick won and made the move for him.
Yes, I think that's true. But I agree with your assessment that Tommy, if he won HOH, would go after them. I know that there are people on Twitter and in the chat room who think that Tommy would not do that, that he would, you know, still try to get the 5 back. Girl, no, even that ship has sailed for Tommy. Like he might talk about that in the house, but internally that ship has sailed for him. He is not going to do that.
Yeah. And again, I think he might change his mind depending on how the week plays out. But I think that's
and Cliff has shown to step on his words sometimes. So that's not out of the realm of possibility that he could have a conversation with Cliff or Nicole and think, actually, they're coming for me even worse than Jackson and Holly might be, which I think is actually true. Like, I think that it's probably true. Like, Tommy's in a really difficult spot because I do feel like that Cliff and Nicole are coming for Tommy and Sis far more than Jackson and Holly are. Like, Jackson and Holly are not coming for Tommy anytime soon. But on the other hand, I feel like that if you don't get Jackson and Holly out of the game, if you're Tommy quickly, at least one of them, then you're really behind the 8 ball and can't do anything.
Yeah.
So,
it's tough. It's a tough spot.
It's really a tough spot.
I think that how Tommy is looking at the game right now is that Cliff is a guy who can make deals. And Cliff has expressed wanting to work with Tommy for a long time, and Tommy has always been the person saying, nah, I don't really. I mean, he's been saying, oh, of course, but then never really follows through.
Right.
And so I think that Tommy feels like if he talks to Cliff, there's a good chance he can make that deal. And I think that he's sort of thinking 2 steps ahead. He's like, okay, so if I talk to Cliff and it works, then I do want to target Jackson and Holly. And so I think he feels that Cliff is willing enough to make a deal, that he's looking that far ahead. But if he gets into that conversation with Cliff and all of a sudden Cliff is the one being like, sure, then he might be like, oh God, the tables have turned. Now I don't know where to go. If I can't convince Cliff and Nicole not to come after me, then maybe I have to go after them. But at the same time, as you said, and I think as I feel, I do think that it would be a mistake to ignore Jackson and Holly, especially given the competition sort of makeup of the last season being so physical in the sort of 8-4 stretch. So
really, and remember, like, we're going into a situation here where there are 8 people left in the house. Once Christy presumably leaves on Thursday, there are 8 people left in the house. That means that 7 people are competing for HOH. If you don't go after Jackson and Holly in the upcoming week, that means you're going into a week where there are 7 people left in the house and 2 of them are in a showmance. That is really dangerous territory when they are as able-bodied as the 2 of them are and hungry as they are. So I think I'd rather take my chances with Cliff and Nicole.
Yeah, and the thing too is that once Jackson goes, if you do make, even if Cliff doesn't plan on sticking to the deal, if you make a fake deal with Cliff, but then follow through and actually target Jackson and show that you are willing to stick to it at least a little bit, then at the very least that might buy you some amount of like credibility with Cliff and Nicole, and maybe if they are now in power, they target Nick or Sis over you. And that might be a good way to work that out. But either way, it's a tough call and it's a tough spot.
Yeah, Rob's in the chat and says Jackson is real hungry. Real hungry.
So Sis and Nick are going to get into a bit of a confrontation. Nick can tell that he's being talked about. He walked in on a conversation between her and Tommy where they were kind of talking about him and they acted a little weird and things have just been weird. You know, Christy's been trash talking him all day, and so he's like, "What's going on? What's going on, Sis?" Nothing. He's like,
oh my God, I hate this. Freaking people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eventually, they get to the point. Sis says that she's been told that, and this is one of the things that Christy said, that Jess told Christy that Nick had been feeding Nicole information about Christy and them to make Nicole target those people. And Nick is like, whoa, no. Okay, I did that like one time, like 4 weeks ago. Ever since then, I have not done it.
Yeah, and Sis is like, oh my God, but I totally trusted you when I gave you that information. And like, how could you stab me in the back like that? Why would you tell Nicole that? And I'm like, Sis, you freaking idiot. Like, think back. 4 weeks ago, his ass was on the block.
Yeah.
You were targeting him. Now, maybe not you specifically, but your group. All of your group wanted Nick out. Nick and Sam were nominated for eviction. You had disowned them. You said, girl, bye. Get out. We don't want you. It was only by the grace of God that him winning the veto that he managed to stay in the house and Sam ended up going home. But it wasn't through any of things that Sis was doing in the house. So why wouldn't Nick talk to other people? You guys are totally throwing him out. Sis is thinking, well, even though our group wanted him out and we probably would have voted him out if you hadn't won the veto, the fact that I confided in you, that I might have targeted Nicole at the time, you should have been loyal to that. Which I say, phooey. That's not true.
Yeah. So yeah, he said, and ever since then, I have always been trying to protect you guys. That has been my goal. And so he said he admits I did make a deal with Jackson prior to the HOH. Tommy knew about it, but I did not make another deal with Jackson after the HOH. He just came to me. He said he wasn't putting me on the block. I was like, okay, that's great. And that was all it was. And I did not throw the HOH. I tried. I have not thrown any HOHs except for, I can't remember which one he actually threw.
Oh, the Crimea River. That's
yeah, that one. Yep. And so he says all of that. And he's really upset. He's upset. How can you not trust me? How many times have I told you that you can trust me and you still don't trust me, even though I say that you can trust me and that I'm trustworthy and I say it over and over and over and you still don't trust me? It really makes me sad. And he starts to cry.
So frustrating. Again, Liana called this, or maybe it was Mary. I know it was over the weekend. I was listening to this podcast, and I was like, Nick's the kind of player who thinks he's playing this amazing game in the middle, and then when he gets caught and people recognize that he is playing a game that's in the middle and shuffling between the groups, he's like, how dare you call me out about that? How dare you? That's not fair.
But I'm telling you different.
Yeah.
Why don't you believe me?
Yeah, although he should have said what I said, which is like, hello, I was on the block 4 weeks ago. You guys weren't even talking to me then. What did you want me to do? Like, come on.
Yeah. And so he's really playing up this, like, how could you question me after everything that I've done?
He does an effective enough job because Sis will come out of this conversation and think, you know what, I believe Nick.
Yeah, and Sis Don't cry. Oh, don't cry.
Yeah. And I will say that she's probably right to trust Nick. And Nick would protect her at all costs. Now, he may not protect her allies. Like, obviously, if Sis learned really how much that Nick wanted Jack out, I think she would be beside herself. But she doesn't know that, and also he doesn't really care about Christy all that much. Although I think if he had won if he'd won the veto, he wouldn't have used it on Christy because then Tommy would have got out. So this is what happens when you have somebody who is part of your group, then you basically disown, and then they come back to your group. Obviously, they're not going to feel as wedded to that group as initially because of the fact that you disowned them in the first place. And Sis sort of forgets that part in this entire conversation.
Yeah. Nick is also going to drop some other information about sort of his end game plans. He says he does not want to be in the end because she's like, well, what aren't you saying the same things to Cliff and Nicole? And he's like, I don't want to be in the end with Cliff and Nicole. Look, I would probably win in that spot because
I don't know why he says that.
I could probably win because I could take Nicole and I could beat Nicole, but that would be way too boring. I don't want to do that. I would rather be in the end with you and Tommy. Even if you and Tommy take each other, that's fine. I'm fine with that. And I would probably, if I took you, I'd probably win, and Tommy would probably beat me, and that's fine. It's really like we're really getting a good sense of what Nick seems to want here. And when I was thinking about it, I was like, you know what? Nick is right, actually. His being in the end with Cliff and Nicole actually might not be the worst thing in the world for him, because he's guaranteed a spot, I think, in part 3 of the final 3 HOH. And if he does take Nicole, and Nicole hasn't won a single thing the whole season, I do think he has a decent chance to beat Nicole, but I do think he has a better chance to beat Sis. But I think his path to the end is more difficult with Sis.
But do you think that he really would? I mean, I'm not even sure that he's going to have his druthers on this, but do you think that he is telling the truth here? Because I actually feel like that he's thinking with the wrong head, and that he is still like, I'll do whatever you want, Sis.
Yeah.
I'll keep you in the game at all costs here, because he doesn't want Sis going to jury.
I agree. I think he's telling the truth. I don't think he wants to be in the end with Cliff and Nicole. I don't think that he wants to be in the final 2 with Nicole. I think he wants to be in the final 2 with Sis. And I think that it's dual purpose. He thinks he can beat Sis, and also...
Yeah, so this is the real power in the house. That I will argue that this is the real power, because even though that, Tommy and Sis have lost a little bit of trust in Nick, they are not going after him, and that effectively makes them a threesome. Yep. I mean, that is a threesome. Nick and Tommy and Sis. That is the biggest group that is in the house currently. They have to be targeted going into next week or the week beyond, hopefully next week. Like, if you don't do something about this threesome heading into final 8, that means they're all going to final 7. And then you get to a point at final 6 where 3 people can effectively control the game no matter who's in power. So, dicey times here. I hope people realize just how close Nick is to Tommy and Sis.
And Team Footsies.
Yeah.
So that's what he seems to be planning in the future. And as you mentioned, Sis is going to believe him in this conversation. Jackson is going to talk with Nicole very briefly. He says that he wants to work with her. He wants to meet up with her and Cliff at some point to solidify something. So again, we're getting closer and closer to this.
It's so interesting that, so much of how Jackson feels as an individual and his makeup is all about day 44. It's all about day 44 with him. He talks to Nicole about, after day 44, you were good to me. You treated me like a person. You said hi to me. You said goodnight to me. Like, do not underestimate how just being a good person in the Big Brother house can really buy you a lot of credibility. I know that it's not the sexy thing that people talk about on podcasts like this, but it really is paying dividends here for people like Cliff and Nicole, who were just a little bit better human beings than, Christy and Sis were in Jackson's moment of need. Remember, Jackson was part of this group, and after day 44, he was effectively excommunicated. And not only that, he ended up on the block and was within a 1 vote of going home. It was dicey. So I can't imagine how much it have been. I mean, look, I'm not trying to feel sorry for Jackson, but I'm just trying to put you in his mindset where he thought he was telling the truth to Jack. He believed in Jack. Jack then stabbed him in the back. Jackson would have probably died for Jack in the Big Brother house. He would have given up his life for Jack. He loved that guy so much. And then when everything came crashing down around him, now it's like, oh my gosh, I'm on my own and no one's talking to me. And all of my former friends aren't talking to me anymore, and I can tell they don't like me, and I can tell they want to get rid of me this week. People like Cliff and Nicole are just being a nice person, and I really feel like that so much of what Jackson feels like right now is all a reflection about what happened on day 44 and after.
Yeah, and that was also the day that he was separated from Jack, and I think up until that point, his loyalty had always been to Jack, and so once Jack was removed from that equation, he was opened up to other things, and that kind of kindness isn't something that I think attracts people initially. Those initial bonds are usually really just the similarities and common interests. But when you're halfway through the game and you're going through things, that's when that has an opportunity to shine if somebody breaks away from their initial loyalties.
Yeah, that's a really good point. That stuff like people just being a nice person and being kind and smiling in the morning and just being cool in general, and not being a jackass, I feel like doesn't pay dividends for you in the first part of the game. And it certainly hasn't for people like Nicole and Cliff to a lesser extent. But now that people are really they've been in there for almost 2 months and they're really tired of putting up with some of these people. And you have people like Cliff and Nicole, who I'm not trying to overpraise here. I'm just saying that their social game is on point and that should be recognized.
Yes. All right. So Christy is going to end up having a confrontation with Nick, and Nick, you're playing all sides. You made a deal with Jackson. You're telling Cliff and Nicole things. You're telling Tommy and Sis things. You're throwing competitions. All sorts of things, and you have loyalty to nobody.
Yeah,
Nick.
This is really disappointing. I think she made a mistake here. I think that this should have waited. Number one, she can't wait. Whatever. Yeah, exactly. Doom is in the chat. Says confrontation in quotes.
Well, yes,
because
it was private for the most part.
And it should not have been. It should not have been private. It should have been public. Christy should have done what she initially wanted to do. She said, I can't wait till tomorrow. I hope someone talks about a gratitude circle.
Yeah,
that way I can say what I'm thankful for. And I can say I'm thankful for, I'm thankful for Sis and Tommy because they're loyal to me. Nick, who are you loyal to? Like, she really wanted to call him out in front of everybody, which I think would have been great. And really it would have been her Godfrey moment where she could have said, look, I'm against you. If I win HOH, I'm putting Nick and Jackson on the block, because then she's got a shot at getting Jess and Cliff and Nicole and Tommy to vote for her, because she needs 4 votes this week. And she would have had a shot at that. But instead, this conversation all took place behind closed doors. And it ended up kind of like, okay, like, I get you. No, that is not what you need right now, woman. I don't know why she did it like this. This is terrible.
Yeah, and so Nick is going to be, denying the claims against him here that he has been loyal to Tommy and Sis, and that's always been his game plan. He hasn't been throwing competitions. They really just they get it. It's a big back and forth, and
yeah. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
It's pretty heated at times. It's a lot of Christy being really upset with Nick, but then not really every point she brings up he has an answer to, and so she's just like, but what would Cliff and Nicole have to say about it then? And he's like, go ahead. I mean, I've been very open. That's Tommy and Sis and Nicole. Those are the people I'm loyal to. She's like, yep. But what about the HOH? You threw it. And he's like, no, I already told you. I definitely didn't throw it. And he's like, but did you?
Well, again, this the reason I was basically once I saw this was happening, and once I saw that there was nobody basically listening at the door. I think Nicole passed by at some point, but this defeated the whole purpose of this. Nick is not the person that you have to worry about here. Nick's not going to change. Nick's not going to move hearts and minds on his own. You need to call Nick out. If you're really that mad about Nick, call him out. Make sure people know you're against him. You'll nominate him if you stay in the house. If Jess and Cliff and Nicole and Tommy all know that you will nominate Jackson and Nick if you win HOH, and that is your target and you're sticking to it, I mean, you've at least got a chance. I feel like she stepped on it here.
Yeah, that is her plan. She wants to say that, but she did. Yeah, she did mess it up a little bit. And again, I don't think that this is the right plan to begin with, honestly, because Nicole is going to overhear this conversation, and or at least parts of it, and it does not make Nicole want to keep Christy. It makes Nicole want to be like, oh, well, I want to protect Nick from Christy.
I know. Yeah, that's the one relationship I always forget about. How it's so weird to me how they're close, because in my head, Nicole shouldn't be that close with Nick after what he did to her earlier in the season.
Yeah. It was also the one part that I enjoyed from the Nick and Christy conversation is that he's explaining that he made a deal with Jack. He was like, well, yeah, last week when I wasn't even going to talk to Jackson, but when Tommy was making it clear to me that he was good with Jackson and Holly, Sis was good with Jackson and Holly, I was like, well, then I'm screwed, because it's going to be, me and you on the block, Christy. Really, the truth of that is that he thought Christy was good with them too. And so he said, well, so at that point I went and I made a deal. Of course I'm going to do that. And Christy, of course, was the person who didn't do that, even though she knew she would be screwed if they won. So I think that just pisses her off even more. Again, he did what I didn't do, and now he's safe and I'm not.
Exactly. And that's that's the game. Like
Yeah.
people did what you didn't do, and you like again had the foresight. Somebody was helping you. They held your hand. They said, "This is what you need to do." You said, I'm not going to do it." And you're going out the door.
Yeah. So Nicole is going to talk with Cliff. She was, as I mentioned, sort of eavesdropping in on the conversation between Christy and Nick. They were pretty loud, as these people often are in this house. And she says that, you know what, if they're like, if Christy's trying to blow Nick up, this is a great opportunity to pull him in. Reel him in. He's if they're gonna push him out, then that means that we can pick him up, because again he's a valuable piece on the board. He's capable of winning competitions and he's willing to go wherever, seemingly, especially if one side is pushing him out.
Yeah, I feel like this is the mistake that they might be making here and keeping Nick in the game. Like they think that they can get Nick. They think that Nick is on their side. Nicole, maybe to a lesser extent, is making a mistake, but Cliff really would be making a mistake if he buys this, because leaving Cliff in the game just gives Tommy and Sis so much power. And you know what it does? It gives Nick options. It gives Nick different ways that he can go. He can go with Tommy and Sis. He can go with Cliff and Nicole. He can, even go with Jackson and Holly, who he's effectively fine with and has, pledged not to nominate next week, which obviously annoys the hell out of Christy and Sis. He has options in the game. Cliff and Nicole, on the other hand, will not have options if they continue to keep Nick in the game. And I'm afraid they don't see that right now. Now, I will say this, that if they succeed in getting Tommy out of the game next week, or even Sis out of the game next week, that will help their cause. That will give, Nick might feel, okay, I have to go back here to Cliff and Nicole now that this side is down to one person in the, Team Manifest side. But I don't like, I don't like where they're letting I don't like where they're letting Nick stand right now in the game. I feel like he really, really is in the middle and has tons of options. And I don't like Nick, so I don't want him to have options in the game.
Yeah. I almost wonder if taking Sis out, because she just can't win competitions. She could, though. Physical ones. Yeah, I was just thinking about, like, if Nicole took Sis out, if Nick would change his final two plans to be Nicole instead of Tommy, since he feels he can't beat Tommy. Worth thinking about. Whereas if she took Tommy out, I think Nick would just double down on Sis.
Yeah, I agree.
But it's up in the air there. So point is, they are thinking that they can potentially pull Nick in. This would be a mistake for them, as you pointed out, because I think that Nick would tell Tommy about it, and Tommy would be like, okay, so I can't work on Cliff. And then maybe at that point, Tommy changes his mind and decides he needs to target Cliff and Nicole, or at the very least, Cliff. And so he needs to be very, very careful about this. I would imagine that they will at some point see that, like, hey, Nick is okay. Maybe Christy's going after Nick, but like, Sis is definitely somebody that is capable of like going to Cliff and being like, I believe Nick, I trust Nick still. At which point Cliff would hopefully realize, okay, so he's not being pushed out. Right. This is a misperception here. But we'll have to see. This is a potential pitfall for the Cliff and Nicole game, especially the Cliff game. This is when Cliff talks about Holly and Jackson. Nicole trusts them, and she trusts Nick. She feels like that Nick, he's playing like they are. He's just doing what he can. And so, again, if they're pushing him out, that means that Nick is finally going to be on their side. But we'll have to see. Nick is usually pretty open, especially with Nicole, about where his loyalties lie. So I would hope that he just kind of opens his mouth before they make a mistake. Tommy and Cliff do have a brief conversation. This happened during the round table, but it was not a full conversation. Tommy says that this is when he says, I thought it'd be better at this game. Yeah.
Yep, thought it'd be better as this game. And I feel like that the universe and the game is sort of pushing us, me and you and Nicole. He's talking to Cliff. Mm-hmm. The universe is pushing Cliff and Nicole versus me and Sis. And I don't want that to happen.
Yes, and Cliff says, I don't want it to happen either. Yeah. I don't like it.
Yeah.
So they again sort of promise each other they will be talking more in the coming days about this situation, about how, you know, and Tommy lays the whole house out. Jackson, Holly, himself, Sis, Cliff, and Nicole, and then Nick and Jess as kind of wild cards.
Yeah, there's 3 duos in the house right now. Yeah, that's what's happening.
So and he doesn't want to be at war with Cliff and Nicole, with Jackson and Holly in the middle. And Cliff's like, I don't want that either. Of course, neither of these two would want that.
Yeah, but I feel like that's a mistake for Cliff though. Maybe he can agree to whatever Tommy says, but if he agrees and wants to target Jackson and Holly, I feel like that is a massive mistake, because what that does then, that, you know, solidifies the Nick, Tommy, Sis side of things, and whoever is left out of Jackson and Holly is probably going to float back over to Tommy because they have good relations with him, probably Holly at that point. And now what? Now you can't play for HOH. Now the 4 of them are working together and you're probably out the door. Like, I can already see how that's going to happen if Cliff decides to go after Jackson and Holly, which luckily doesn't look like he's going to do right now. He really needs to target somebody like Sis and Jess, or Sis and Tommy, or maybe Sis and Jess with a Tommy backdoor. I feel like that's all a possibility.
Yeah, you know, I wonder if we talked about the move for Cliff is targeting Tommy. I wonder if the move for Cliff is actually targeting Nick, because I think he can get away with targeting Nick without pissing Tommy off enough that Tommy wants to retaliate instead of targeting Jackson and Holly next. So if Cliff was able to take Nick out, it keeps Jackson and Holly against Tommy and Sis. It's also something that Jackson and Holly would support because they want Nick out.
Oh, and heartbeat. Yeah. Holly would be like singing his praises.
Yeah, and Nick is really part of that trio, so he's weakening the trio, he's making it a duo without actually taking a shot at them. Nick is way more loyal to Nicole than Cliff, so it's not great for Nicole's game, but it is good for Cliff's game. I'm starting to think maybe that's the move for Cliff next week, if he can manage it.
Does he see that though? I'm not sure.
I don't think he sees it now.
I don't think he sees. That's the thing. I don't think he sees it. But luckily, he has time. Again, I don't know who Cliff would nominate. Would he? Nominating Tommy and Sis isn't terrible, but I do feel like that nominating Nick with like Sis would be the better option.
Yeah, I think that might be the move there, but that is not what he is seeing right now. Again, what he's seeing right now is, I want to pull Nick in and have Nick with us as the secret trio, and that would be a mistake.
Yeah.
So, finally, toward the end of the night, we had a little bit of controversy here. There's some rumors running around. The feeds cut for a little while, and there were some tweets and whatevers about potential megaphone yeller. I feel like we didn't have any in season 20, which was nice. But season 19 we had a few. Season 17, season 16. This used to be a fairly regular thing. And it's in my opinion, pretty annoying. And I really don't even want to give it too much attention. As far as I'm aware, nothing came of this. I don't think that anybody actually heard what was being said. Holly is going to ask Jackson, did you hear what was said? He shakes his head and goes, and then the feed's cut. So these people were trying to expose Tommy and Christy. It seems like it failed. I don't think a megaphone yeller has ever succeeded in conveying a message. It's very difficult to understand what's being said. So I believe that I can't think of a single time that the message has been clearly heard and acted upon in the history of Big Brother.
Yeah, I will say that I listened to the message and they were smart this time, the megaphone people, in that they weren't themselves like getting the megaphone and talking into, hey, Christy and Tommy know each other. No, they didn't do that. They played clips in the diary room of Christy talking about knowing Tommy, which was distinctly different and is far more capable of convincing these people. But they don't know why they're doing it now. Like, Christy's going home. Like, what is the point of this? Like, if you wanted to do this, like, well, whatever. This is terrible timing. I don't even know. I can't even tell if this really happened. First of all, let me ask you this, Taran. Do you think somebody tried to yell something into the backyard.
I personally do think so.
Okay.
Now, I check the Reddit thread fairly often, and I remember seeing somebody post on the Reddit like, "Hey, I want to do a megaphone thing. If you want to help out or contribute, like let me know." That post was deleted within like 2 minutes and immediately went away. But a person with the same username was also on Jokers posting the script of what the thing was, saying that they were the ones that did it. This was like 2 weeks ago that I saw it on Reddit. So I think this was something that has been planned for a while, and that they followed through on. My guess is that it's something that actually did happen. I don't know if the video is necessarily super true, but it seems like it is to me. But either way, I do not think that they heard it. Now, people are like, oh, they thought that Jackson said, he did hear it. I made sure to watch the interaction between Holly and Jackson a few times. He shakes his head no and goes, so I do believe he was saying no, he doesn't know anything about it. Now,
there were some people on Twitter who were saying that, production had told Jackson and whoever, because I think Jackson was lifting weights out there. I can't remember who was all out there, but I know Jackson was lifting weights, and they had told the people that were outside in the backyard, you cannot discuss this with other house guests or risk eviction. So that's why he responded negatively to Holly. So maybe he actually did hear it, but he's pretending like he didn't. I think that's probably fake news. But
I think that there would have been more of just a general reaction, he would be itching to let Holly know this, and they certainly cut the feeds a lot, but they would not be able to cut the feeds anytime this comes up in the future, because it's so relevant.
It was really odd though, because when they came back from feeds, they're all looking at the cameras and they're it was, it seemed like an odd attitude in the house. Sorry, but I couldn't figure out exactly what they had heard. Again, I think that this is a big bunch of nothing. People want to make a big deal about it. It looks like somebody tried to do something, but I don't think that anybody effectively heard anything. And Christy's already going out the door. Again, I have said, I talked about this on the roundtable, I think Christy's not going to be able to keep a secret for 4 or 5 weeks in jury house when she's letting her guard down. She's going to say that she knows Tommy. That's her. I mean, she's been dying to tell people for the longest time. You're really going to tell me that once she's out of the game and has no chance to win, that she's going to keep the secret? No, she's not going to. And once people find out that she knows Tommy, I really feel like that's going to hurt Tommy's game. So there's no point in this.
Yes, and if they were acting weird, usually what happens, the protocol is you call everyone in, you have a lockdown, you speak to them individually, you say to them, if you start to hear anything, you get inside, you do not listen, this is on you. You do not talk about what you heard. If you heard anything, anything like that. So they take these things pretty seriously from my experience in the past. And so that's a little bit like, did we do something wrong? It does create a little bit of an awkward atmosphere in the house afterward.
Yeah.
But like I said, the megaphone has never worked before. People tried to, and here's the thing, because there are some people that they decry the microphone, the megaphone. They say it's not fair, and then people are like, well, but it's not fair that Tommy and Christy know each other. So we're just leveling the play. This is for fairness. To which I say, no. It's not. It's you do not get to decide. You are not the arbiter of fairness in the Big Brother game, because if we say, yeah, it's fine for somebody to yell something over the wall with a megaphone because they're just making the game more fair, then we also have to say that the people who yelled about Paul in season 19 when they were trying to expose Paul, that was fair too. They decided it was a certain portion of the fan base was like, hey, it's only fair. Paul is a vet. He deserves to be outed. It's only fair. Okay, well, that's an argument too. People who tried to do it to Vanessa Oh no, it's only fair. Vanessa, she's a rat. She uses her emotions. It's only fair that we rat her out. She's working with Austin and Vanessa have deals with everyone. We get to expose that. It's not fair that Meg is being voted out. It should be Julia. It's not fair. So well, okay. Oh, you know what? Derek is a cop. That's not fair. He has a skill set that is so far above everyone. That is not fair.
How many times did I hear that?
Derek deserves to be outed as a cop. You can't say one thing is fair and other things are not fair, because when a random fan takes the game into their own hands, they are making that decision, not us. And so we have to decry every instance of it, because it is not their decision to decide what is fair and what is not, and they should not be trying to influence the game from the outside.
I agree. Also, Rob is in the chat and said that it might have been better if, I'm adding this part, but he's adding this part, like where it would have been better with you with the megaphone, Taran, and you just said they know each other.
I mean, right, but like
that might have worked better.
Like, imagine if I took it upon myself when I do jury interviews to be like, well, I know what's fair and what's not, so I get to drop some info on these jurors before they head to the jury house. Like, that's what we're giving these people the power to do if we tell them that this is okay. It's not cool. Not cool, guys.
Everyone in the chat was waiting for it. Actually, I didn't really pay this much mind. I really didn't. Like, I saw this at the end of the night when I was going to bed, and I was like, what is this? Like, did this happen? And then I waited for the feeds came back, because I was talking with my friend Kim, and then like she was like, did you hear, like, they yelled over the yard? And I'm like, oh, really? Like, she's like, yeah, feeds are down. We got fish right now. I'm like, oh, because I had just come off the round table. And so I'm like, I looked online, and then right then feeds came back, and I'm like, okay, something appears to have happened, but they're not talking about it right now. So, whatever. I was too tired to try to figure out what happened.
Yeah. And like I said, it seems to have failed dramatically, just like every other instance of a megaphone. So what are you going to do? That's about what happened for the rest of the night. There wasn't too much other movement there in the night, unless there's anything else you wanted to bring up, Brent.
Nope. Sis is begging for a power again, a button, a power, a wand. She'll take anything at this point. That's the extent of her knowledge in the game.
Oh, boy, you'd think that being like clearly one of the bottom 3 house guests sent to the field trip.
She doesn't believe it. She's like, no. By the way, Christy is thinking about it again. She's like, I was voted into that field trip for a reason. And Sis is like, nah, they could have been voting you into that field trip because they wanted you to get safety. And Christy's not buying it. So I'm like, when Tommy's HOH, I don't think so. But then again, they were aware of the fact that they've been voting since day 44. So like, whatever. They can think whatever they want. Christy knows the truth, and Sis is living in a dream world.
Yeah. All right, so that's what we have for you today. Make sure you tune in tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern, where I will update you on everything that happens today on the Big Brother 21 live feeds. And then, of course, tomorrow night, we will be live with Brittany Haynes to recap the Wednesday night episode.
This is what Sis needs, Taran. She needs the genie bottle to make a wish. Maybe that would help her.
I've been really good in the game. I haven't done anything bad.
Craziness.
She would be really bad at wishes, though, Brent.
Oh my God, yes.
Totally leave it open for the genie to mess with her.
Yes. As a fan of fantasy and sci-fi, you have to get the wording right on the wishes.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're really gonna come back to bite you.
And it wouldn't even be like oh, I wish that one of me or Christy could stay, and then like, oh, wait a minute, no, I meant both, damn it. So that's what we have for you. You can find me on Twitch, twitch.tv/Taran Armstrong. You can find me on Twitter at Armstrong Taran. Make sure you check out the Taran Show with Derek Levasseur. Got a lot of fun there. You can find Brent at One Lucky Gay. And yeah, that's what we have for you. So thank you so much for joining us today. We'll see you next time.